Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the latest statements that have come in regarding the Pulwama attack and the fact that it was a propaganda largely by Narendra Modi. We'll be talking about that, the ramifications of the statement that show exonerates Pakistan from all the allegations that India has perpetuated over time. We'll be talking about that, the effect of this kind of damaging politics coming from across the border. The Satya Paul statement that has come in also clearly vindicating Pakistan in this. A little bit about that, and a little later on we'll be talking about the conditionalities as far as IMF is concerned. The fact that do more seems to be a constant here. We've also had the Prime Minister say that measures will be taken to fulfill the conditions as far as IMF is concerned. What kind of effects we can expect as far as economy is concerned. We've also seen the fuel prices being affected, and are there likely to be more effects that follow as far as the economy is concerned? What can we expect after the funding from UAE, which is likely to be received soon? All of that today, a little later on. I have with me Dr. Awais bin Wasi, who is a Kashmir expert. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Nida Salam Chaudhry, who is a human rights activist, also an Indian expert on Indian affairs. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Awais, like we were saying earlier on, there has been so much propaganda surrounding the Pulwama attack, which has been perpetuated over time. Not just, as far as it has been fueled by India internationally also. They've tried the way they've made us look consistently. This busts that in a big way. It vindicates Pakistan in a big way. How do you see this development overall?
Yes, Pakistan has always been saying that these statements are unsubstantiated and there is no evidence in these statements. But when it comes from the horse mouth, from the person who was appointed by Indian Prime Minister Modi as the governor of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So this is a startling revelation, and this is extremely important that the person who was responsible for this transition after the revocation of Article 370 and 35A, when the state got bifurcated, and he was in fact the point man of Modi in state of Jammu and Kashmir. And when he mentioned very clearly in the recent interview with Karan Thapa that this was our mistake, this was our lapse, due to that this Pulwama incident occurred. So had there been some aircrafts requested by the government of state of Jammu and Kashmir, but union government refused that. But when this gentleman Satya Paul mentioned these things, that this was our lapse, Indian Prime Minister as well as the security advisor Ajit Doval both asked him that not to talk about it. You have to remain silent on this issue. So this silence speaks volume. That it means that there is
but the damage,
something, there is something fishy, there is something wrong behind which took place, and they capitalized.
They're trying to hush it up, so to speak. And of course, as far as silence or no silence, they have effectively said what the reality is at this time. And that, do you think it will have, Nida, do you think it will have ramifications internationally? Of course, we want the international community to take cognizance of this, but do you think it will happen? Because India is known for its propaganda against Pakistan, also with regard to Kashmir. In a way, it's exposing the center of that propaganda.
Well, I strongly believe that Pulwama attack was a false flag operation, and the startling revelations made by the member of the Modi government, I strongly consider horrendous and grim. By blaming Pakistan, it only benefited Modi and 2019 elections for him. India's Prime Minister is a liar, he's a fabricator, he is a falsifier, and I strongly believe that Indian Prime Minister is a prevaricator as well. Because he lied to the people of India, and he killed his own soldiers for his own benefit. I would like to give an evidence in relation to that. On 9th April 2019, during the rally in Maharashtra, he stated word by word, I would like to quote here, that vote for the Shaheed of the Pulwama, vote for the soldiers of the Pulwama. So in reality, Pulwama was a pre-planned by the Indian government just to play a blame game against Pakistan. The awful incident was a security lapse, and he forced his governor to tight-lipped and blame Pakistan. So we utterly condemn that.
But as far as this is concerned, Dr. West, do you think it's going to, again, of course we condemn it, of course we have seen the reality of it, but this is what Pakistan has been saying for a long time. This in fact vindicates our stance. It in fact shows that, you know, what we've been saying all along has been true, a fact that is now reiterated by their very own people. But do you think it will have international consequences, or you think the international community will again choose to stay silent on this such an important issue, the way it's been fabricated, the way the propaganda has been run?
I think this incident is not an isolated incident. There is a consistent pattern that we observed on the part of India. And if you look back in the history, similarly in 2001, when Parliament attack occurred in New Delhi, so again India blamed Pakistan for that. And there was a standoff for 10 months on international border between Pakistan and India. This Pulwama attack led to the same standoff, and the full-fledged war was about to take place because India brazenly violated international border when it attacked Balakot. So similarly it did in the past, in 2001, that continued for 10 months. So after Pakistan's restraint and Pakistan's responsible behavior, that de-escalation occurred. So this is the incident, and even if you look back, there are many incidents where there was an officer, HAMEED, he was killed during Mumbai attack, and on that a book was written by S.M. Musharraf, who was a senior police officer, Inspector General of Maharashtra, who killed Karkare, the real face of Indian terrorism. And where he mentioned 41 incidents where either Muslims were killed in many incidents, and blame was leveled, allegation was leveled against external forces or within India. But later on, after investigation, it was revealed that extremist Hindutva forces, they were involved there. So international community, coming back to that question, I think India is a nuclear state, and international community
it enjoys certain clout internationally. Yes.
International clout, and international community should take cognizance of this irresponsible behavior of India. And in the past, in March 2022, India, there was a missile in BrahMos missile in Pakistani territory, and that also raised question about India's irresponsible conduct, being a nuclear state. So this is height of irresponsibility, and international community should take cognizance and should make India accountable for that.
Do you think that the timing of scraping of Article 370 is also linked with the propaganda that stemmed from the Pulwama attack? Do you think it was made easier as a result of it for the Indian Prime Minister to take that step?
No, the timing is extremely important in the sense that, as Satyapal himself mentioned, that for the political purpose, for the domestic political purpose, before the elections, these all things took place. And whatever he mentioned, that is very important, I think, is that Prime Minister Modi is ignorant and ill-informed about the state of affairs in Jammu and Kashmir. So
that it shows his own incompetence, certainly, and Malik has also talked about that, the carelessness of the Indian forces themselves, the way they, like you said, ill-informed Prime Minister, and the resultant effects that ensued from there. As a result, of course, we've seen the scraping of Article 370 also, the timing of it. Nida, do you think that, again, when we talk about consequences, we haven't seen, unfortunately, any tangible consequences come out of the kind of actions that took place, as far as scraping of Article 370 is concerned?
MAHRUKH, I would like to mention here that timing plays a very important role from all perspectives. What India and her nasty collaborator wanted to achieve from this incident, they wanted to see Pakistan and Iran isolated and fragmented. They wanted to create chaos in Middle East, Afghanistan, because Pakistan was bridging at that time between Afghanistan and Washington, and Pakistan was playing a very important role in terms of Iran as well, to develop or build better relations. So at that time, Pakistan was not only bridging, Pakistan was hosting world leaders on their land. So the Crown Prince is an example for that. So I strongly believe that the attack
so you're saying it was intended as to impact us on a lot of levels.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Internationally
the
also.
Attack was executed to derail Pakistan, to destabilize Pakistan, and to give the message internationally that Pakistan is not a faithful friend. Pakistan harbor terrorism, Pakistan expand terrorism. I strongly believe that India not only tried to destabilize Pakistan, India was involved not only in Pulwama, Pathankot, Uri-1, and even the attacks in Pakistan, GHQ, Mehran base in Karachi and all that, they funded that as well. And how we can forget Kulbhushan Yadav? The world witnessed that from all perspectives. So Indian Prime Minister benefited. Imagine, like you're a Prime Minister, head of the state, head of the elected government, and you're using your power to kill your own soldiers, and you're lying to your citizens. So this is the time to be worried for the Indian nationals and the citizen to question their Prime Minister. Another term I would like to mention here, Gujarat butcher, the term given to the Indian Prime Minister by the international media. I would like to quote here from Pulwama attack. From the leaked videos and audios of Indian very famous journalist Arnab Goswami, it is evident that the Prime Minister Modi collision with Indian army, Indian agencies, right-wing media, they created casus belli by orchestrating Pulwama incident to play blame game against Pakistan. So international community is quite well aware, and that's why they called Indian media a mother of the fake news. This is called by the Guardian, the Telegraph, the New York Times.
Right. Dr. Wes, what about other allegations that are made in this interview? They also, talk about corruption, which have also been leveled against Modi. Do you think overall, as far as the impact to his popularity is concerned, the way minorities are being treated in India, there has over time been, an unveiling, so to speak, of what's happening in India, regardless of the propaganda internationally? Do you agree with that? Do you think that people internationally, there is more information about what's actually happening now?
Exactly. The charges about the corruption level, they are also very important, because Modi came to power on the plank of fair play and transparency and justice, and doing these state affairs without any corruption. And they claim that there is no 2G scandal here, there is no 3G scandal here. But once this gentleman, the ex-governor, mentioned that Indian Prime Minister is perhaps not very serious to curb corrupt practices, and there are a lot of people along with the Indian Prime Minister, they are involved in corruption cases. So similarly, in today, if you see Indian media landscape, there is utter silence, and that silence speaks volume, because it means that there are some factors, and mostly financial factors. Because of that, Indian media is not taking up this very important issue, this very important revelation. So it means that the corrupt practices by his own governor, by his own former vice president of Bharatiya Janata Party, I think it exposes BJP's and Prime Minister Modi's claim that there is no corruption in the BJP government.
What about his popularity in terms of the elections now? Do you think that's going to play a role also, Nida?
Well,
internally speaking, I'm saying.
Well, as far as the popularity is concerned, there's no doubt he's popular among fascist because he believes in fascist doctrines and on the grounds of fascism, and how he tried to divide the Indians on the grounds of the religion, the Muslims. There are many incidents, and I think Prime Minister Modi is the only Prime Minister of India during his era. People suffered a lot in terms of the violations of human rights. So imagine your prime minister is killing your soldiers, and now you're going to give him vote again to elect. Well, that is pathetic, and that is a serious question for the Indian citizens to consider, because I consider Modi is a threat towards peace and stability in the region. As far as if the prime ministers like him will again be elected, then it means that there will be no peace in the region.
What about in terms of the law? What about in terms of the International Court of Justice? In terms of what ramifications do you think it can have? Do you think these statements can possibly link us to move towards against India internationally, or do you think that these are not actionable?
These statements coming from the very important member of the Modi-led government plays a very important role and leaves a very, very huge and significant impact on Indian current government, because a member of the current government is exposing the conspiracies against their neighbors and all, and internationally they wanted to send the message that as far as the Kashmir is concerned, in that context, that struggle is actually nothing but just fueled terrorism abetted by Pakistan. Western allies, Western community and Western societies entirely denied that. When they witnessed the atrocities and violations of human rights within the India. I would like to give example of Sikh community, Dalit community, Muslim community there.
What about our case as far as India, Kashmir is concerned? This will, this can potentially, because we've of course had dossiers also, but in terms of our evidence against what's happened against Kashmiris, this can have a significant role there also, no? When how we plead our case as far as the United Nations is concerned, how we plead our case internationally against
it will play an important role, because Modi won the elections on the name of the Pulwama attack, blamed Pakistan, and after he won elections, soon he abrogated Article 370, 35A, that was all interlinked, interconnected. Yes, that will play a very important role in the United Nations to raise the voice for Pakistan as a state.
Right, fair enough. Dr. Wes, what about for us? What do you think is the next step for us to take this and actually for it to have tangible consequences? What can we do in your opinion?
What the state should do is, I think that we have a lot of evidences, we have a lot to say, we have some advantageous position, and that must be capitalized, that must be advanced. This Pulwama attack, this startling revelation before the commencement of some G20 session in Srinagar, I think Pakistan should immediately prepare a dossier and should reach out the G20 members, European Union, other Western countries, also some Muslim countries, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, China. So they must be sensitized about India's false claims, India's what in fact tries to project, and what is the real situation. And along with that, whatever legal position that we have on Kashmir, that must also be shared with them. For example, that India tries to exploit its presidency to advance its ulterior motives, to advance its geopolitical and regional objectives. So I think that this is the time that robust diplomacy and media offensive is required to put our case across. And apart from that, the Kashmiri diaspora, the intelligentsia.
It's time to mobilize everyone in that way, so that we can actually see some results.
Exactly.
Because this statement is coming right from the horse's mouth, like you said.
Yes.
And when, if not now, can we capitalize on that?
Exactly.
Nida, what about as far as our representation in the UN is concerned?
Pakistan should use further diplomacy, and Pakistan immediately act on this one in United Nations and raise the voice, because obviously these evidences are quite reliable evidences. Because today my question is from international media, that Indian media and their channel, Republic channel, during Pulwama attack, it was beforehand at the scene. So like, if we connect the dots, it means that like
it was perpetuated.
Everybody was involved, and internationally they should take a very strong stance on that.
But do you expect, like I said, of course we can't shy away from the reality of India enjoying political clout, economically also, as far as they're being a part of the G8 also, and overall G20. You think that Pakistan has its own geostrategic position? Do you think that other than taking this up in the United Nations, perhaps internationally also, putting it out there in the international media, perhaps maybe another way to go forward? You think international media will pick it up also?
Oh yes. Pakistan has good relations with their neighbors, China, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Middle East, United Kingdom, and a lot of members of European Parliament are quite good friends of Pakistan in terms of the stance of human rights in Indian occupied Kashmir violated, and they all raise voices at many different various stages. So Pakistan should engage them diplomatically.
We need like engagement all across, as far as our Kashmiri diaspora is concerned, as far as overall international media is concerned, also as far as engaging our own intelligentsia is concerned, and local media, all of that. Thank you so much for your valuable input, Dr. Wais bin Wasi, Nida Salam Chaudhary. Of course, in the next couple of weeks, how Pakistan takes this up will determine whatever benefit we can have to vindicate ourselves, as far as these statements clearly do. We'll be taking a short break and come back to talk more about IMF and the conditionalities that effectively ask Pakistan to do more. Welcome back. We have with us Dr. Khaqan Najib, who's a senior economist. Thank you so much for being with us to talk about what the IMF is expecting from Pakistan. Dr. Khaqan, is this we've had a discussion from time to time on the economic front, but is this now a new move by the IMF asking us to do more? How are you looking at this now, the additional requirements that seem to be coming up?
So MAHRUKH, good to be with you and on PTV World. I've always said Pakistan in a balance of payments challenge has no other way out of this but to remain with the IMF. I think Pakistan was very lucky that as we came out of COVID, Pakistan was already in an IMF program. The countries around us, they should a program, whereas Pakistan was there. But somehow we've been unlucky in the sense that the program's gotten, over and over again, we've gone off track the program, or program's gotten withheld. It happened when we gave the petrol subsidy, and now even as I talk to you, I would have rather had Pakistan do the 9th review sometime in November and have had the money so that our reserves were not here. But since then, Pakistan has done a lot. There is no doubt about it. The government that came in, of course, was a new government. they're carrying on the task of electricity adjustment, gas adjustment, 170 billion rupees of taxation, then taking off the subsidies that were given to the industrial sector to push exports, refocusing them on the targeted subsidies on the income support program. So, I mean, the hump was quite big. Still, we weren't there. Then what we did was that the rupee was let to be completely dependent on the supply and demand forces, as we has promised the IMF when we signed this program in 2019. We did all this, Maruf, before the staff level agreement was signed. Usually, these prior actions are done after the staff agreement.
Okay.
So what you can imagine here is that there is a sense of mistrust or a deficit of trust between Pakistan as the recipient country and the IMF. Now, where we stand is that we gave them a financing plan based on a certain current account deficit and the need to pay our debts and markups internationally at the appropriate time so that there is not even a technical default that happens with Pakistan. So we were, initially this actually started with $7 billion. Then Pakistan even bring it down to $5 billion, but I think 6 billion were agreed. We are still at 6 billion. So I tend to agree with the authorities here that I think we'll need 5 billion, but the fund would rather see us do 6 billion. Out of the 6 billion, we've done 3 billion with UAE and Saudi Arabia. I'm hoping that those countries would put up their word or their guarantee to the IMF so that the executive director would confirm that in the IMF book. I think maybe before that, even we get one of the two monies from these countries flowing in. China, a bellwether friend, a friend which has always been there. We gave them back 2 billion. That 2 billion has come back. That is why our reserves are
So
above.
Hakan, but also the 2 billion that's coming from the UAE, right? So that makes it 4 now.
No. So 2 billion from Saudi Arabia, 1 billion from UAE. So that's 3 billion, and we've gotten back 2 billion from China. So that's the quantum. Now, what is remaining is that another $2-3 billion has to be arranged from the multilaterals, the bilaterals, and the commercial loaning. I've always said that here some onus falls on the IMF. I think that is the view the authorities should have taken with them. Multilaterals work very closely with the IMF. So once the IMF was to give us a stamp of approval, we have a RISE program. This program is a program loan that Pakistan would get about 450 million. Along with that would come 5 from AIIB. So let's say these two put together give us about $950 million. If this was true, which it is, I think IMF and the multilaterals could, have a chat on that and, finalize this. I think here the role of the IMF becomes very, because now once we have their seal of approval and they talk to these people, and then the bilateral partners, some monies that are, I think, lying in the Geneva promises that were given to Pakistan. So some money from there, and then the commercial flows. Maruf, this is important. The commercial flows come in once you get a stamp of approval from IMF. Because as I've always talked to you, it's not IMF's 1.2 billion that's important. What is more important, it's its seal of approval that Pakistan is on a reform path. Pakistan is trying to bring down its
Because you've always said that that will have its own consequences for Pakistan if you have the confidence, and that's what we essentially need.
Absolutely. So let's say now this can be a chicken and egg kind of a story. So once we get this SLA, I'm confident that I think these are the UAE commercial banks from where some commercial loaning has to take place. That will take place. Another task is that how does Pakistan now approach the IMF on the 10th and 11th review? For me, this is now the easier part to get this 6 billion as we've just discussed. Maruf, what has become very important is that we stay steadfast. And when I say we stay steadfast is that, you, the media, we, the policymakers, we, the commentators, must, ask the government and stand with any incumbent government that we must complete the 10th and the 11th review. do the needful so that another 1.2 billion would flow in from the IMF, and we would raise our state bank reserves somewhere close to $8.5 billion. That would be my best case scenario.
But as far as locally speaking, on the home front, domestically, how are these things going to affect us, you and I, or normal people, as far as these conditionalities are concerned, and the patience that we'll all need to have to bear with whatever the IMF wants?
So, Mahrukh, that's a question. Yesterday, the government had to raise the petrol prices, right? Now, that affects you and I, and especially the people who are in the low income bracket, because a large part of their money goes into, food and transport. So, why would I say do the IMF? Let's say we had done the IMF, and IMF was also more forthcoming, and somewhere in November this had happened. So I'm trying to build a scenario so that people understand what benefit the country would have taken from that. What would have happened is that our dollar reserves would have been somewhere $6-7 billion. This dollar, which has today become the store of value for the investor, this dollar, which has become scarce in the country, has created a crunch in the country, and our supply chains are disrupted, would have improved. So food, wheat, cotton, lentils would have been easier, and pharmaceutical. Let's say all this had happened. I think the pressure on the rupee may have eased a bit.
Okay.
Consequently, the price that you and I pay for the petrol would not have had to be raised this much. So Pakistan is in a dollar liquidity crunch, crisis, challenge, whatever word you want to use. The short-term doctor is the IMF, but the medium-term doctor is Pakistan's policymakers to put forward a plan where we could privatize, sort the energy sector, sort the agriculture sector, sort Pakistan's domestic resource mobilization, give confidence in Pakistan. Those are the hard tasks which now depend on us. This is the kind of plan I think Pakistan.
But are we, of course, political certainty is linked to what's been happening overall, the way that, of course, we've seen the kind of unrest, and the opposition also, rile it up. There's been talk of default on and off. Of course, we've seen a no come off nearly, as far as the IMF is concerned, for them to say that Pakistan is not there yet. How do you look at the ramifications of this kind of a statement?
So, Mahrukh, I think you've used the very correct word. Everyone keeps talking about political instability in the country. I have always said that, I have seen political instability for decades in Pakistan. That's part and parcel of being in Pakistan. But what we have not seen this time around, which is different, is the word that you've used. We are seeing uncertainty on the political cycle. I think that hurts. And we've also not seen, with a lot of respect to our institutions, that the kind of unanimity that they should have shown to solve our issues as well. These are two new variables which are impacting economic certainty or economic stability in the short term. Now, on the political front, I've always said that everyone has their views. It's opposition's job to say what the incumbent government is doing, criticize them, give their policies. But one job is certain: whether you go through the constitution, whether you go through the talking process, which has now started, that you need to create certainty on the political side. It's important for domestic investor. It's important for multilaterals. It's important for external partners. It's important for the reputation of Pakistan. These are all smart, mature people.
But Dr. Khaqan, do you think it's going to be possible in the environment that we're in? You're looking at institutions again, you mentioned, we are looking at institutions at this time again, not exactly in the best kind of, circumstances. If we look at the courts, the parliament, overall the situation, do you think that that's going to have its own effect as far as our exchange with the IMF is concerned? Now that we're so close to them, signing up, so to speak.
So, I'm generally a very, positive and hopeful person. I think Pakistan is over the hump. We are very close. as soon as the Saudis and the UAE, the Middle Eastern countries, give us a nod in terms of either placing the funds, and as soon as I think the authorities have now, what I've heard, is engaged with the World Bank as well as with the AIIB for the $900 million. As soon as these arrangements come in place, the monies from there and assurances from the friendly countries and the 900 million assurance, I think things would get sorted out. I am very hopeful in the next 10 to 15 days. There are two other things that where as I've said, we've done a lot, but there are two things that are important here. One, I think we should not have announced the subsidy on petrol. I understand it's a cross subsidy. I understand there is no bearing on the fiscal, but I also understand that the IMF, when someone from here sends a cutting saying that a subsidy is being created, then they get all ears up. What is this subsidy? Is there going to
But
be a
this is
so
this is
then
a
you go into
subsidy
an
of the last
explanation.
government, right? This is a subsidy
No,
of the last
this is
government.
a new one. No, this is a new one now. You know how we want to charge the big cars and give it to the small car owners and the rickshaws. It's well-meaning. No one's questioning. But the problem here arises that the fund, when it gets that cutting, and I'm sitting in Washington. So Maruf, now I will give you a call and say, Maruf, what do you want to do with the subsidy? You will have an explanation. You will tell me that there is no fiscal impact, but there will be a conversation that will ensue between you and me. That conversation will take the next 3 days because you will send me a data. All I'm trying to say is that the Q block, the ministry has indicated that this is going to be in a few weeks, and even then with the IMF discussion. So it's not something we are doing. So I hope that can be sorted. And then I've always said this, and I say this carefully. Yes, 21 billion are required to be given to ECP whenever the elections are to be held to stay within the constitution. But those 21 billion will be discussed with the IMF, and the government will give a plausible way to do a supplementary grant under Article 84 of the Constitution, and how that money will be arranged, whether it's a cut in the PSDP or new taxation or whatever will happen, so that the numbers that have been agreed with the funds stay intact. So
But
these things I think go through the
do you
system.
think it's going to, do you think as far as the time, as far as elections are concerned, again, you're saying the continuity of the political process. At this time, do you think that's going to play a role again in once the IMF signs off on the dollar also, and the situation of how it stabilizes, it's directly linked? How do you see that?
So timing, Marukh, has become actually very, very important here. So let's see the timing. Let's say sometime in April, and let's be hopeful that the ninth review concludes. It'll take a month to get the board done. So sometime end May, let's say, if things go well and all these moving parts that we've discussed fall in place, and we are able to do that. Maruf, there is 10th and 11th review that is due. And now my humble opinion would be that we combine the 10th and 11th review, and sometime in May, maybe, or early June before the budget, how this will play
Yes,
out.
exactly. I
So,
wanted to come to the budget also. That's something that's going to weigh in with the government also, and also the IMF.
very heavily, Maruf, because the fund would like to see what kind of fiscal discipline, what kind of responsibility in terms of the subsidies, what kind of reforms in terms of pensions and expenditures that the government can put in. The better you do, the stronger position you have, because then you can convince the world that you mean business. So, so in the election cycle, all these things are also playing on the side, right? The ninth review, the 10th review, the 11th review, the budget, and then a new cycle of another $25 billion that you need to put up next year. So, the task on any government, the incumbent, the caretakers, and the newcomers, is
It's
obviously
going to be.
cut in stone, etched in stone, but very, very hard. And I feel for Pakistan right now. I think it's a tumultuous time, because internationally the situation will remain difficult for 6 months. Maruf, something we haven't talked about. The federal funds rate, when they started raising the rates, it's a synchronized effort of raising rates. So if I'm getting 5-6% internationally in the developed markets, my EMs, the emerging markets, Pakistan will have difficulty finding money. A Russian digital account holder would think that, now maybe I'm getting a better deal there, so maybe I should not be sending money to Pakistan. So, we have a difficult, the economies are then slowing down because once, the rates are going up, so your exports are getting hurt. The next 6 months are very tough. Astute economic management would only save the people of Pakistan. And here, MAHRUKH, I always say something nowadays, and this is something new that I've started talking about. I think the people should take more responsibility, be very careful in their spending, put some savings, whatever this. I don't mean by saving 100,000 rupees. If you save, 100 rupees a month, 200 rupees a month, do that. Use less electricity as we hit summer because prices are on the higher side. Use less petrol. All these things.
Austerity measures. Thank you so much, Dr. Khaqan. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your valuable input as far as economy is concerned, overall, as far as IMF and their stance on Pakistan doing more is concerned. Certainly, according to Dr. Khaqan, this is a time of reflection. This is also a time for us to be careful as far as spending is concerned. It's a time to save as much as possible, as little as possible, and to think of Pakistan and where we are going. Of course, not just the 9th review, but the 10th and 11th review are pending, as he said, and those are something to look out for as far as the government is concerned. But also every little bit that we can do as normal citizens, we must do at this time, because things are certainly in a difficult position as far as economy is concerned. Of course, he is expecting a nod very soon as far as the IMF is concerned, which is what the government is also saying. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.